With 1 week left before training camp ends, Boston College has one thing they need to fix if they're going to have a successful season.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network, and I've been covering Boston College for over 10 years. If you're looking for analysis, scoops, and details on your Boston College Eagles, you are in the right place. We are a daily Boston College podcast available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts 5 days a week, completely free. On today's show, we're going to look at whose stock has risen since the start of camp in August for Boston College football. And I'm going to give you 3 things I'm watching for in the final week of practice. So let's kick that off. But before I do that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first order. So camp has one more week left. Now it's 2 weeks before the start of the season, but the next week will be Fordham Prep Week. So it's a little different than training camp, which is what they're in. So with 4 practices left, or 4 or 5, I think they have 5 left before that week starts, there's still a lot of football left to practice. And they're in the grind right now. If you talked, we're all asking the players because we're in the grind too from the media perspective watching these practices. Some of it get a little repetitive. How do they get through it? And they're dealing with the more physical aspect of that and the mental aspect. So that's one big piece that you're going to be looking for is how are these players dealing with that grind? But that's not what I'm really watching for because that's something every football team deals with. The first thing I think that I'm watching for Boston College football in this next week is going to be the field goal unit. Look, I have said 2 things. First of all, 1, the special teams unit last year was a disaster in kicking and punting just in general. They took 5 field goals. They were the worst punting team in the country. It was a mess. I've also said punting right now is in good shape, and I stand by that. We'll have Mike Sidley on tomorrow's show to go over the scrimmage from Sunday. He couldn't make it, or Saturday. He just couldn't make it today to record for Monday's show. But he said, Andy Quinn, Seamus Florio, you've got punting under wraps. The kicking, however, has been a little bit more inconsistent. You have Luca Lombardo back after he got hurt last year. You have Liam Connor in. You need to be able to kick some field goals. And I'm not asking for 45-yard plus field goals here right now. I'm taking baby steps here with your field goal kicking unit. 35 to 40. Can you consistently kick those? It's been inconsistent at camp. Let's leave it at that. So will one of these 2, and I think it might be Lombardo, reach up and grab that brass ring and take that job and be able to kick? Because when you're a team like BC, you're not going to go out there and blow out 10 of the 12 teams on your schedule. It's just not going to happen. You need to be able to kick in some of those positions. And last year they weren't able to do that. Being able to do it this year could help, push that team forward. Will they be able to do that? I think that'll be something I'm going to be watching for to see if that finally clicks this last week. The second thing I want to watch for, the other big piece as we get down to the end of camp that I'm looking at is the play of Dylan Lonergan. This is like beating a dead drum here, beating the drum over and over, but he's the starting quarterback now. He has shown to me that since he's been named starter, I could see it now. Like, as the camp has gone on, this is not a knock on Grayson James, but now as I've watched more and more, I can see why Lonergan got that starting job. His command of the offense is really impressive. And now, hopefully, he's going to get more of his receivers back. Will we see how dynamic he can be in this next week? Because this will be his chance to really take it to that next level before game prep week for Fordham. I am very excited to see him continue to push the ball forward more. We've seen, at the beginning of camp, if you were just a general observer, the beginning of camp, they tried passing it deep downfield, but you have to have context because it wasn't good. The communication and the timing just wasn't there yet. So both Grayson James and Dylan Lonergan had trouble with that. As we've gone on, it's gotten a lot better. There's been a lot of good deep passes from Lonergan. Want to see more of that. But again, I also want to see him understand how to read defenses, escape pressure, that kind of piece. I think that will be an important part of his growth as well. And, he needs to just continue to develop. And I think that's what we're going to see here. But I'm still fascinated watching him every step of the way. So, can he get the ball to Reed Harris? Can he get the ball to Lewis Bond and run the offense and run the ball when he needs to? I think he'll be really good at that. The final thing I'm going to watch for at practice is the return of players who are injured. This is something that's just, it's fascinating to watch. So on Saturday, Bill O'Brien gave updates on some of the injured. Over the last week, I've said that they have not been participating, but we got further info on where they're actually at. So Reed Harris, he's dealing with, I believe, an ankle injury, but he should be good to go. He has not been participating for a couple of practices. That's good to hear. Jude Bowery, he also should be good to go. I was really worried about that, but I'm glad to hear that hopefully things are okay there. Because he just had not been practicing. You cannot lose Jude Bowery. That's something he is. He's up there as one of the most one of the guys that you can just not lose. So to hear that he will be hopefully back will be good too. And then Turbo Richard, I think he said he cut his finger. I'm not sure what that is, but something with his finger. He should be back too. So I breathe a huge sigh of relief for those three because that's a big trio to make sure that they're healthy. You've heard during camp about other guys that have been out, right? Owen McGowan still is out. Jalen Blackwell is out. We have not seen Shaker Rising yet. And I have to say, not having Shaker Rising at camp has been kind of a bummer. I was really looking forward to seeing what he could do. He's out of a boot now. Hopefully, maybe this week. I don't know. I see him throwing around after practice, but hopefully he'll get better soon. Because I just love to see what he can do. And no knock on Enzo and Jara. It's just he's been out. So he's out. Jonathan Montague is out with an ACL injury for the year. All the guys that have been missing, and it's hard to see who's hurt and who's had load management, because this is a grind, and some of these guys just get nicked up and they need days off. But to see over this next week who actually comes back, because Lewis Bond sat out a couple practices a while ago, but he's back now and he's totally fine. He's having a great camp according to O'Brien. So watching to see who and we'll have to ask Bill about it if there's guys that are missing, but watching who is not there is going to be important too, because missing a Jude Bowery going against Michigan State would be a big deal. And but we don't know. It sounds like he'll be okay, so that's good to hear. Now, in a moment, I want to give you some guys that have seen their stock rise at camp. I'm going to look at the offensive side of the ball. These are guys that maybe you don't know much about, but I've really been impressed with at camp. I'll tell you who those guys are in just a moment. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts, and that's where Drip Drop comes in. Drip Drop is a doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium, electrolytes, and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading sports drink. Now, this weekend, I'll tell you a quick story. Took my kids to Storyland up in Glen, New Hampshire. If you haven't been to Storyland, you got to get up there. It was hot out there. It was like 90 degrees, standing in line with my kids. Well, I had Drip Drops in my bag. I had one big bottle of that, and I was feeling like $1,000,000. I did not feel dehydrated at all. It was great, and it tasted great. So I was so glad that I had that for that trip, because that weather, some people wilting out there. Not me, because I had my drip drop, so that was great to have. So right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use promo code Locked On College. That's dripdrop.com, promo code Locked On College for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat continues to hit you hard. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black, and all my everydayers out there have been listening to all my camp coverage. And I want to shout out Mike Sidley, who has helped me. He's come to a couple camps. Between the two of us, we have been to every single BC camp this year, practice this year. You're not going to get this kind of expertise anywhere else. So I'm glad if you're an everydayer that you're here. If you want insider information and someone who knows the program inside and out, you're in the right place. And I'm glad you're here too. Now, camp is not just about the guys that are playing well. You know, we've heard a great deal about Quintavious Hutchins and KP Price and Lewis Bond at camp. But what players have I seen on the offensive side of the ball that have seen their stock rise? These, and I'm not saying that they're going to be starters. I'm not saying that they're going to be on the two deep. These are players that I just have watched at camp, have heard things about, that are going to be names you're going to want to know about. The first name I want to make sure that you know about is Bo MacCormack. Bo MacCormack's a running back from BB&N. He's a freshman who just got on campus this July. He was a kid that flipped from Syracuse, so you automatically should love this kid. But he holds the Massachusetts state record for rushing yards in a career in high school. And there's a good reason for it. If you watch this kid, you want to talk about motor. Bo MacCormack is all gas, no brakes. That's what this guy is about. He, to me, looks like a guy that we could see at some point this year, whether it's on special teams, whether it's in the offense. He looks like a guy that needs to get out there. Like, I have just been blown away with the amount of good runs he has. And yeah, when he gets to ACC play, it may be a little bit more different than what he sees in practice. But he's going to be a valuable asset for you sooner rather than later. And maybe it might be till next year that you don't see him do a big role. Because, you know, he might want a whole year in Craig Fitzgerald's weight room. But just the tenacity of this kid's running game. He is a pit bull out there. For a guy that's not, he's good, got decent size. But he's not the biggest dude, but he doesn't care. He runs into hits. He's fearless. I think his stock is going to rise a lot. Now, this next one I'm going to go over just quickly because I had a whole episode on him on Friday. That's Jaedn Skeete. I cannot tell you more how impressed I've been with Jaedn Skeete at camp. You know, to me, going into camp, it seemed like it was going to be, you know, Lewis Bond, Reed Harris, and then Jaedn Skeete or VJ Wilkins, or maybe even Jonathan Montague, who I didn't know was hurt. It's clearly Jaedn Skeete, and he's making an argument that he should be one of the top two targets on this team, because while Lewis Bond is like that scrappy dirt dog wide receiver that's just, you know, he gets the ball and he just, you know, volume catcher. Jaedn Skeete, as I said before, looks like an NFL wide receiver. Like, he's just got long arms. He just, when the ball gets to him, he just attacks it and gets it with his hands. He has had an amazing camp from what I've seen. And I think he's just going to, he more than anyone else here has seen his stock rise tremendously. So he's one. Another one I want to mention is Michael Crounce. Michael Crounce. Now, I don't think we've got a chance to talk about this. On Bill O'Brien's YouTube podcast on the camp, he does something with John Mita Perrell. The last one was really interesting. If you haven't checked that out, go grab it. Bill talks about who his starting offensive line is going to be. And I give credit to Bill because he tells you a lot of things. None of this half-truths and whatever. O'Brien is right out there. He said, it's going to be Kevin Klein, Jude Bowery, Logan Taylor, Eric Stoggerty, and then he told us, he says on this, they're not sure about the center yet, which is crazy because I figured Dwayne Alec was going to be it, but he mentions Michael Crounce. This is the next name I wanted to bring up. Michael Crounce has had an excellent camp, and it would not surprise me in the least if he's the starting center this year. Which is, I don't know what they would do with Alec if that was the case, but you've got, if he's out there and he's doing the job that you need him to do at center and he's your future, you're going to have him for a couple of years. That's good. Like, no offense to Alec, who's also a nice center, but Alec's gone after this year, and then you're starting over. If you can use Krauts now and have him for 2-3 years, which I think you could, that's a nice developmental system that you have there. So I've really enjoyed watching him play. Speaking on the offensive line, Pape Sai. That's the kid from Senegal who went to the NFL Academy in England. Seen a lot of him at camp. And he looks, I don't know what the Matt Applebaum program is, but he's doing a heck of a job of developing him. Because last year I remember watching Sai at camp, and he looked very much like a kid just learning football. He looks like he fits in this year. You wouldn't, if I didn't tell you what number he was, you would not know this is the same kid that last year was playing like he had 2 left feet. Excellent. I'm not saying he's going to be ready this year. Maybe he just needs another year, but another one that's caught my eyes. I think that the stock has risen quite a bit for him too. And then the final one I want to bring up, and this is one that I know a lot of the writers are talking about, is Jaedn Skeete. You have your starting 2 tight ends, I assume, in Jeremiah Franklin and Ty Lockwood. Those I would imagine are going to be the guys that you're going to go to a lot when you're doing 1-2 offenses and things like that. But who is after that? Zeke Moore is most likely going to be like your fullback tight end. He could be in there in your 1-3 base sets when you're, a lot of goal line type of stuff, and he'll be good at that. But what happens if one of your tight ends gets nicked up? Who's next? Because Zeke Moore will not be, filling in for those other 2 guys. I think it's going to be Jaedn Skeete. He has been here for a full year, and this spring he caught my eye. This summer he is one of the most consistent passing targets on this entire offense. And that says a lot for a true freshman that I believe was a wide receiver coming out of St. Sebastian's. Like, this is a position change for him too. Now, there's a lot to assume for a tight end. He's got a block too, and I don't know as a tight end how he's doing. I don't have the film to watch it, so I can't get into that piece of it. But I can tell you, with his hands, really catching my eye. And then, you know what? I'll throw you one more. I gave you one for almost every position here. Let's give you one more. Wide receiver. Dawson Pugh. While some of these wide receivers I mentioned that Reed Harris hasn't been practicing, VJ Wilkins hasn't been practicing at times, Pugh has been the guy that's been taking up the lion's share of those snaps. And over the last week, he's been the one that I've been watching and going, wow, he's making a lot of plays out there. This is a true freshman who came in the spring. After spring, I thought Nedrick Bolden was a little bit better, but this summer, it's been Pugh that's really been taking advantage of that opportunity. So he's a freshman wide receiver, looking pretty good out there. I imagine we'll see him this year. I do. So he's one I watch for in that offense as well. Those are my stock risers on offense. No one at quarterback because the stock has already risen. You have your number one quarterback, and that's about it. But in a moment, I'll give you some defensive ones too, because I know you guys want to know more about the defense. And I'll give you some guys that I've seen that I've said, wow, let's talk about them. We'll get into that in just a moment. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with family or friends? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes that all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices in the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that makes taking the worrying out of buying. I love Game Time. I used it to buy Woo Sox tickets with my family. I had a big group coming. They had it all set up, easy to find. Got my tickets, got my family there, easy peasy, so good to use. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black here, and thank you all who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen every day. And if you're looking for a second listen, check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. It gives into everything going on, especially with that new playoff format that Big Ten's offering. You got to hear what he has to say about that. Now, we gave you some stock risers from camp over the first 3 weeks that have caught my eye on the offensive side of the ball. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, the first name on everyone's lips should be right now, there's two. I'll give you the two that have been almost my MVPs of camp. First of all, Favre Bate. If you've not listened to Favre Bate's interview with the media from camp, go get that now. He is an incredible young man who plays with a high motor, who Bill O'Brien really likes. And get this, he's coming from Merrimack, where he had 125 snaps. Barely played as a freshman. I mean, he played as a freshman, but not really all that much. BC somehow finds this kid, brings him in, moves his position from defensive tackle. He's like a 270-pound defensive tackle at Merrimack, makes him an edge rusher, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's one of the guys that we're talking about. But I'm going to tell you one thing. Watch him, but also keep your eye on Edward Kalengi. Remember him? He was an edge rusher from a couple years ago. Bill O'Brien also mentioned him as one of the most improved players at camp, and I've noticed it too. Maybe Bate is the guy that they end up with across from Q Hutchins, but don't sleep on Kalengi. That's the one I really wanted to bring up to you. I'm going to skip defensive tackles because it's just been a bit of a mess. I can explain later. Owen Stodmeyer is out. There's been some other guys that have missed some time. I think, if you're going to talk defensive tackles, all right, I'll give you one. The guy at defensive tackle that really stood out to me has been Chris Marable. Now, Chris Marable has missed some time, but this transfer from Wake Forest, I think, is going to be a real hit for them. He's one I'm watching for, but I wanted to give you that one really quick. Linebacker, one I cannot, in terms of stock risers, Jason Hewlett. You could talk about Von Pemberton or whatever. Hewlett, I think, is going to be the guy. I think he's going to be a guy out there that we're going to see a lot of. This is the transfer from Michigan. I'm seeing more and more of him at camp. O'Brien's been impressed by him so far. I think he's just going to play a big role. With Owen McGowan out too, this is a chance for him to really take advantage and be that 4-star recruit that he was supposed to be. And then in the secondary, I could go with anybody at this point. But, if I want to go, in terms of stock rising, it's got to be Sayer Torrance. Sayer Torrance, last year, I thought he was going to be the nickel corner. He's out there as an outside corner right now, battling guys like Max Tucker and Amari Jackson and Ashton McShane for that spot. He has been an absolute play machine, and he did it again on Sunday, where he got beat once by Jaedn Skeete, but then knocked the ball out of his hands in the end zone on another play. He's just been a play-making machine for BC. So he has really caught my attention because he's a name, if you went back, other than Mitch Wolf, who knew about him, if you went back, most people don't even know much about him. But he's number 10, and he's a name you're going to want to watch for this season. His stock has risen like a rocket. I'm really excited to see what he does against live bullets. On tomorrow's show, Mike Sidley will join us to talk about the second scrimmage, and everything he's noticed about BC. And there's no practice on Monday, so we'll just be talking about that. Anything else new, we'll be breaking that down here at Locked On BC. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Check me out on Threads, Blue Sky, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm also there. And you can find me on TikTok at Locked On Boston College. I hope you follow me along there as well. We'll be back again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College. Whoa. Before I go, I forgot to give you a new trivia question. Now, the last question that we had, I'm doing terrible at this. I got to do better, so I'm going to try it now. I think almost everyone got this one right. Who's the all-time leading receiving touchdown player in Boston College history? That was Zay Flowers with 29 receiving touchdowns. My next question for you. In 2011, Boston College lost in the Kraft Fight Hunger Bowl to what future NFL quarterback? Again, in the 2011 Kraft Fight Hunger Bowl, what future NFL quarterback defeated Boston College? Put that in the comment section. I will show you out. Everyone else got it right from last time. I will have that on Tuesday's show, so make sure you're there. Thank you all for following, and we'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.